Hello all, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Today, I welcome you all to the webinar series of Streamline and Automate CLM across multi-cloud. Right? I'm Karthikeyan Mani. I work as a design architect at AppViewX. So we all know cloud computing has evolved dramatically in the past decade, right? So we started with on-prem infrastructure, and then we slowly moved to single cloud deployments, and soon we found ourselves embracing hybrid and multi-cloud strategies. While this has given us flexibility to pick the best of AWS, Azure, and GCP, but it also has introduced new challenges, especially when it comes to security, governance, and automation, right? One critical area that often gets overlooked is certificate lifecycle management, right? So in today's session, I will be covering why managing certificates in multi-cloud environment is more complex than it seems. We will also look at the gaps in built-in solutions like AWS Certificate Manager, Azure Key Vault, and GCP Certificate Manager, right? We will also explore how smart discovery and centralized visibility can help enterprises stay ahead of this issue. And if time permits, I will give you a complete walkthrough of all the multi-cloud CLM features and some actionable best practices to streamline your CLM. So by the end of this session, you will walk away with a clear strategy for managing certificates in a multi-cloud world and some practical steps to start implementing automation in your organization. Let's dive in, right? So, okay, let me start with the key challenges in the multi-cloud, right? So we all know multi-cloud is becoming the standard for enterprises looking into maximize agility, resilience, and cost efficiency. So AWS, Azure, and GCP, each one of them offers unique strengths, and organizations are leveraging their flexibility to their advantage, right? But with that flexibility, that comes a challenge, right? So especially when it comes to something as foundational as certificate lifecycle management. So it is not just enough to issue a certificate, right? So organizations need complete visibility, governance, and automation to manage them effectively. Yet in a multi-cloud world, this becomes exponentially harder. So let's focus on three main challenges: visibility and control, compliance, and orchestration, right? So the first and most pressing challenge is visibility and control, or rather the lack of it, right? In a single cloud environment, tracking certificate is relatively very straightforward. But when it comes to multi-cloud environment, where you have AWS, Azure, and GCP, they do have different management interfaces and policies, right? Without maintaining a unified view, managing the certificates is going to be very difficult, right? So managing multi-cloud certificates is like tracking inventory across a global retail chain, right? So where each store speaks a different language, uses a different point of sale system, or having a different inventory codes and report them in a different format, right? You have thousands of items, but finding a specific one, knowing its status or understanding its impact, that's a logical nightmare, right? So when it comes to visibility and control, right, it is not just about having all certificates in one place, right? So true visibility should come from the clear answers to critical questions such as who is responsible for each certificate, which team owns it, right? And which application will be impacted in case if this certificate got compromised, or if this certificate is going to expire, right? Which applications are going to get impact on, right? And in every day, so like even today, right? Many organizations lack this level of visibility, leading to missed renewals, inconsistent configurations, and increased risk of security threats. So this visibility leads directly to the compliance challenges as well, right? So organizations are bound by strict regulations such as NIST, GDPR, and HIPAA, all of which demands for robust security and encryption standards. However, ensuring compliance across multiple cloud platforms is far more complicated than it sounds, right? With the given nature of limited visibility. So one of the biggest issue is the surge in the usage of untrusted and self-signed certificates. Our developers, right, they often use them, these self-signed or untrusted certificates, they often use them for convenience, but without proper governance, these certificates can end up in our production. And we see that in real time, right? So in today's fast-growing cloud-native environments, certificates are often treated as an afterthought, rather being embedded into CI/CD pipelines and DevOps workflows. So this slows down the deployments, increases human errors, and leaves security gaps. Now, some of you might be thinking, don't cloud providers offer built-in certificate management tools, right? So the answer is yes. They do have tools with which you can do a complete certificate lifecycle management for the certificates. But the reality is these tools have very serious limitations, right? That can lead to security risk and compliance failures. Now, let's take a closer look at the key challenges with the native cloud CRM tools and understand where this shortfall. The first major challenge with the cloud native tools is visibility, right? So each cloud provider has its own certificate management tool and they work in isolation. The certificates which are residing Key Vault or Certificate Manager is not going to be visible as part of your AWS Certificate Manager, right? Let's take an example of a situation in AWS Certificate Manager, right? Here, the certificates are tied to single region. Okay, so as an administrator, one may have to navigate across tens and hundreds of AWS accounts and switch to different regions to identify a specific certificate, to track them for expiration or compliance, right? They don't have a centralized inventory which has a list of all the certificates which are used in an AWS organization or even within a single account, right? So you will have to switch to each single region to identify a specific certificate. And apart from this, they do not have a track of the container certificates, Kubernetes, or VM workloads, right? So they don't manage those certificates, and they won't be able to discover those certificates. So at any cost, right? So those certificates will never be part of this certificate manager. So there is no single place in which I can get a complete visibility of their own cloud environment, right? It is pretty much the same case with Azure Key Vault as well. So in terms of Azure Key Vault, the certificates are linked to a specific Key Vault resource, right? User will have to navigate to the individual Key Vault resource. So during the demo, I will show you like how, what is the difficulty that the current administrator has when they have to navigate across different key vaults to identify a certificate, right? So they will have to navigate across different key vault resources and subscriptions to identify a specific certificate. Pretty much as the same cases of Cert Manager, at least in terms of Cert Manager, you have visibility at region level, but in terms of key vault, the visibility is available only at individual key vault resource level. So again here, same goes, the container, Kubernetes, and VM workloads cannot be tracked separately, right? So when it comes to visibility, right, pretty much all these vendors has similar limitation, that is including GCP as well. So as an enterprise, we often use certificates from multiple certificate authorities, like many public and private CAs, right? So however, these cloud native tools provide minimal to almost no support for managing external CA integrations. See, with AWS Certificate Manager, the capabilities are only available for the CLM capabilities. They are available only for private CA and Amazon CA. If you're using any third-party CA certificates, whether it is coming from your own internal CA or it is coming from CA providers like Sectigo or DigiCert, right? You are on your own, right? When it comes to tracking the expiration, handling the renewals, and managing everything else. So this adds extra administrative overhead, making certificate management even more complex, right? When it comes to this GCP certificate manager, they don't have integration with any of the external CAs other than Google. Google won't CA, right? They do have a certificate authority, and when you use a certificate manager, you can get those certificates signed by Google, right? But other than those CA, you will not be able to renew or perform CLM operations for any other certificates when you use Google GCP certificate manager, right? So Azure, on the other hand, they do have integration with a couple of CA partners. I believe it is GoDaddy and DigiCert, right? I will have to check on that. I guess it is GoDaddy and DigiCert. But the challenge is, if the capabilities of a CLM in terms of Azure is very limited to a handful of services, right? And there is no support for other third-party CAs or your internal CAs, right? And again, due to the lack of these integrations with the third-party CAs and automation capabilities in their cloud-native CLM tools are often restricted, and it is limited within their respective cloud environment, and that too only for a handful of services. So additionally, there is no support for managing certificates in modern workloads like containers, Kubernetes, and virtual machines. And this makes the lifecycle management even more challenging, right? So if you look at these tools, right, none of these tools offer a built-in policy and control framework for certificates. So without this, so administrators can't effectively enforce any sort of compliance for these certificates, right? To summarize, right? So the cloud native tools fall short in 5 key areas. One is the limited visibility, external CA integration challenge, the lack of automation, compliance gaps, and no support for modern workloads, right? While these tools may work well within their own cloud environments, they are not designed for enterprises operating in hybrid or a multi-cloud ecosystem. So the big question is, how can organizations overcome these challenges, right? And achieve seamless automated secure certificate lifecycle management across AWS, Key Vault, and GCP. So in the next section, right, so we can explore how a unified CLM solution like AppViewX can solve these challenges and provide complete visibility, automation, and compliance across these cloud environments. So we are not going to replace, AppViewX is not going to replace any of these existing cloud native tools. Instead, it is complementing these tools and addressing the gaps in terms of offering the unified CLM solution, right? So let me change to the next slide. So on the right, you see the list of cloud vendors that AppViewX has built integration with various services of these vendors, right? Once these cloud accounts are onboarded into AppViewX, so smart discovery features that is built in AppViewX will automatically discover all the certificates across multiple accounts, services, and resources. So all the discovered certificates are then consolidated into one single centralized inventory, right? So that's our certificate inventory. So instead of scrambling to track down certificates across multiple cloud consoles, you now have one single cloud inventory where every certificate, no matter where it resides in your cloud, it is going to be visible, right? So after being added to the inventory, certificates can be enriched with the custom attributes such as you can add ownership details to it, you can add project names, which application it is associated with, right? You can add any sort of custom information to those certificates with the help of the certificate attributes, right? During the discovery, AppViewX automatically pulls in existing cloud tags, meaning you can search, filter, and sort these certificates in AppViewX using the same tags you already use in your cloud account. So in case if you have a practice of tagging the resources in your cloud accounts, right? So all those tags will be discovered. That includes the resource tag as well as the certificate tags. So all of those tags will be discovered, and that will be stored in AppViewX. So if you have to search for a specific certificate with the same resource tag from the cloud inventory, certificate inventory, that is feasible as of today. Right. So with the centralized approach, right, AppViewX provides a complete visibility into each certificate. So if you click on any specific certificate, right, which is in AppViewX inventory, it will take you into a certificate hierarchy view where you will see different accounts or services where this certificate is associated with, right? If the certificate is associated with a Key Vault, a load balancer in AWS, or if this is associated to a load balancer in your FY device, right? So all of that association can be seen in one single screen, right? In addition to this, where exactly the certificate was discovered from, in which region and which account and which service this specific certificate resides, and what is the name when it is stored in that specific resource. All of that visibility can be provided as part of the certificate inventory. So this means you get to see a full context on every certificate, knowing which projects and applications are affected when the certificate expires, tracking ownership details, and mapping certificates to the respective resources. In short, AppViewX solves the problem of centralized visibility, ownership tracking, and resource mapping. So once your application teams like DevOps, app owners, the SecOps, right? So once your application teams they are onboarded into AppViewX, they will have visibility into their, you can configure AppViewX in such a way that they have visibility only to the certificates and the cloud accounts, right? They can manage their own cloud accounts. In case if you're discovering hundreds of AWS accounts through AppViewX and on, they can, we can restrict them to a specific cloud account and specific set of certificate resources using our role-based access control, right? So, right. So other than this, they can also, configure certificate expiration, compliance status, and create custom dashboards based on their need, right? So to automate the certificate lifecycle management, so AppViewX has built integration with all major public and private CA, right? Whether it is ACM, Microsoft CA, DigiCert, Interest, Sectigo, GoDaddy, right? Or any of your internal CA, right? Any major CA, AppViewX has built integration with already. It is available out of the box. And AppViewX with those certificates in the inventory, which are discovered from the cloud, right? So AppViewX can automatically renew those certificates, regenerate, and deploy those certificates in your cloud service application before it expires, right? So one major advantage of AppViewX Surplus is that the private keys right now are scattered across multiple devices, right? For example, without automation, right? See, let's assume like an application owner, right? If he wants to launch an application in AWS cloud, right, and he is offloading the SSL part on the load balancer using the ELB. Now, what he has to do is he has to upload a certificate, a public CA signed certificate into the ELB, either via ACM or IAM, right? So ACM or IAM accept the certificates only in a PERM format. So if there are no automation in place, this specific user will be downloading the certificates from the CA console, right? And then he will have to, in a PEM format, right? So if it is an PKCS12, he has to convert that into a PEM, right? In basic 64 encoded, right? Without any password, he has to keep that in his device, and then he'll be uploading it to the respective service. So this way, the private key, we never know where exactly this private key resides, right? It could be in a jump box, it could be in his machine, or it could be using some other server where these private keys are, not properly secure, right? So in these situations, right, it's a critical security issue in most enterprises, right? But with AppViewX end-to-end automation, this risk can be eliminated by pushing the certificates directly to the endpoints. Like if there is a certificate, right, you got it enrolled by a specific certificate authority, let's say DigiCert, right? This certificate need not to be downloaded from AppViewX console. Instead, the certificate can be pushed directly to ELB, CloudFront, Application Gateway, or virtual machines. This way, we are not exposing the private keys anywhere, right? In AppViewX, it is that there is a 3 level of encryptions in our database, right? And in case if you prefer to generate the CSR in the HSM itself, that is again doable with the help of AppViewX. The CSR will be generated in the endpoint. AppViewX will get the certificate signed with the certificate authority, and it will put back the updated CA signed certificates in the endpoint, right? So this way, we are also ensuring the compliance with best security practices, right? So this is something which you can follow for Key Vault as well, right? You can generate the CSR in the Key Vault, right? And then AppViewX will get it signed by any of the third-party CA that you prefer, and it will push back the signed certificate into the Key Vault. That way, the private key never leaves out of the Key Vault itself, right? So unlike any of the native tools, so AppViewX can discover and manage certificates within infrastructure as a service environments, like including containers, virtual machines, or Kubernetes, right? So we have solution for those modern environments as well, right? So with the centralized policy management, the CA policy, right, we can enforce compliance by restricting key usage, encryption standards, key lengths, domain restrictions, right, define certificate generation parameters, right? That way, you can enforce compliance across all of your multi-cloud environments, right? So these policies, pretty much right, with these policies, the compliance is enforced during the certificate request, renewal, as well as during the certificate update. And now what about DevOps or engineering, right? So the speed and agility is very critical for them. They often work towards a deadline, right? And security can't slow things down for them, right? But using AppViewX API, your DevOps or engineering team can seamlessly provision certificates with cloud resources and perform actions such as certificate enrollment, certificate deployment, binding certificates to a specific cloud service or application. So it can be easily done. So all this can be automated with a CI/CD pipelines as well, right? They can integrate the entire AppViewX APIs into the Jenkins pipeline if they want to enroll a certificate for an Amazon load balancer or a Key Vault, right? Azure Key Vault. So all of this can be embedded as part of the CI/CD pipelines, which allows the DevOps or DevSecOps teams to maintain security and compliance and without slowing down any of the operations, right? Now, so far, we have covered how AppViewX integrates with the cloud vendors and simplifies the certificate management with centralized visibility, automation, and the policy enforcement, right? Now, let's take this discussion into the reality. So how does this actually work in a live environment? Let's dive into the live demo on how AppViewX seamlessly onboards AWS accounts, discovers certificates, and automates the lifecycle management. All right. So when it comes to onboarding your AWS account into AppViewX, right, there are a couple of options. So let me take you to the AppViewX screen. Under device management, you can find the cloud edition under the cloud segment here. So click on add. It will take us to the AWS Cloud Edition page, right? So as you can see here, we have two options. The first one is standalone. The second one is cross or federated. So this standalone will be ideal in case if you have an AWS account that are not part of your AWS organization, right? And you prefer to manually onboard each and every AWS accounts into AppViewX, then you can consider this as well, right? But if you want AppViewX to automatically discover all of your AWS accounts and onboard them into AppViewX in one single shot, right? So in such cases, you will have to go with cross or federated based onboarding. And if you have all this auto sync enabled, right, as part of the onboarding configuration, if you have this enabled, what happens is, as and when a new account is onboarded into your AWS infrastructure, AppViewX will automatically discover those accounts and it will onboard that into the AppViewX inventory, cloud inventory, right? Sorry. So both methods uses AWS access key, as you can see here. So both method uses a access key and secret key for authentication, right? But the difference is with standalone account onboarding, you will be creating a separate credential for each AWS accounts. In terms of cross or federated onboarding, so you will be using this one single credential for your hundreds or tens and hundreds of AWS accounts, right? So irrespective of the number, like it could be even in thousands, you will still have to maintain only one credential as part of the AppViewX, right? And in our upcoming release, we are also working on IAM role-based onboarding that will be available in our upcoming release. So with that, you can eliminate the need to generate these credentials manually. Okay, now let's talk about the IAM prerequisites for onboarding, right? So right now we don't have any of these details to like access key and secret key where it can be generated. If I want to proceed with the organization-based onboarding, right? Where can I get this information? What exactly needs to be done, right? So I'm going to cover that part. Okay, let me take you to the AWS console. Okay, so now for AppViewX to communicate to your AWS accounts, right? So we need an identity to be created in the AWS accounts. So this identity creation for standalone account is very straightforward. You will be creating the identity in the account, IAM user identity in the account that you want to manage, right? And you will be attaching the policies and permissions that are, available as part of the AppViewX Help Center documentation. You will be attaching those policies to those user account. And then from there, you can start to manage these cloud accounts from AppViewX. But in case of cross or federated account onboarding, this IAM account, user account, has to be created in your master account, right? So the first step is, so when you onboard across a federated account, right? The first step is to identify a specific master account for your organization. So in this example here, so this is my organization account, right? And this is my, these are the child accounts which are part of the organization account, right? So basically, if you ask your AWS administrators to create an identity in the organization account, they would refuse to do so for security reasons, right? They don't want to have any identities to be created, especially the local identities to be created in the organization account. Similarly, they don't prefer to have any workloads running in the organization account, right? So instead, the workloads and identities are often offloaded to the child accounts. In such situations, we will have to designate account a master account for AppViewX. The reason why I call it as master account is, so whatever the account that you designate is as it as master account, you'll be generating an IAM user identity in the master account. From rest of the account, let's see if this is the master account, even though this is the root account, right? So rest of the accounts should trust this master account so that the master account can assume to the roles which are created in the child account. Okay, let me cover that in detail, right? So now that I have created, let's assume I have created an IAM user in this master account, right? And generated an access key and secret key. So with this, for this master user to talk to the organization service to get the list of accounts, right? Now, AppViewX has to identify all the accounts that are part of your AWS infrastructure. So that we are, doing it through the organization service. So using the organization service, we will get the list of AWS accounts. So for AppViewX to communicate with the organization service, which is running in a different account, right? This identity is created in a different account in your child account, and this account is not aware of this identity, right? When we attempt to communicate to this account, it is going to fail. So this is where AWS has came up with the concept of IAM role based authentication or cross account signing, right? So basically, we use STS assume role authentication in the backend to assume to the role which are created in the child accounts, right? Let's say here, for it to work, right? What I have to do is I will have to create a role, and for this role, I will have to attach a set of policy, right? One policy basically. So as part of the policy, I will be adding some permissions like describe regions, describe organization accounts, list accounts, like that, right? A couple of read-only permissions, right? Once these permissions are created, assigned to the role, right? So what this master account user will do is master account will assume to the role which is created in the child account. If it assumes to the role directly, right, it is going to fail. The reason is there is no trust relationship between this role and this master account, right? So again, there has to be a trust permission policy that has to be attached to this role, which should be trusting either this specific user account or the entire account, right? That way, any user identity which is created in this account can assume to this role. If you want to restrict that to a specific user, to the master account user that is created for AppViewX, you can mention the specific username as well as part of the trust policy. That way, only the user identity which are whitelisted as part of the role trust policy will be able to assume to this role, right? And it will have the permission to interact with the organization service, right? So now this master user will assume to this role and inherit these permissions to communicate with the organization service, and it will get the list of child accounts. Now that we have, we will, AppViewX will discover all these child accounts and it will onboard them into inventory. Once the child accounts are discovered, right? So for AppViewX to communicate with the individual child accounts, we again need, we have a master account here. For AppViewX to communicate with these child accounts, a role has to be created in all of these child accounts. And in this role, so we will have to, provide policies and permission. We will have to attach policies and permissions to manage AC2s, ELBs, ACM, whatever the service that you want to manage, right? You will be, attaching those permissions to the specific role, and there will be again a trust policy, that should trust this specific master account. only then this master account will be able to assume to this role. So as part of the master account, you will also need access, to assume to the roles that are created in the individual child accounts, right? So one basic prerequisites here is the role that you are creating across these accounts should have a same name, right? If you're using different name across different accounts, then you will not be able to onboard them using org-based discovery. Instead, that is, we also have a different onboarding method called IAM policy-based discovery. We will be able to use only that, right? So, but the recommendation will be, to go with AWS org-based discovery. That way, any amount of AWS accounts, right? It could be in hundreds or thousands. It is a very scalable approach, right? We will be able to onboard that in a single shot. So once the accounts are onboarded into AppViewX, it does not mean that AppViewX will start to discover the certificate instantly. You can pick and choose the list of accounts that you want AppViewX to manage, and rest of the accounts you can have it as unmanaged so that AppViewX will not initiate any kind of interaction with those accounts, right? Let me take you to the AWS console to show you the roles that are created in these accounts. So as you can see, I don't have any user identities created here. I have created a role called AppViewX CLM role 31001, right? So and I have attached a policy which has the permission for describing and listing the resources related to the organization, right? So there is a trust relationship which is established from this specific organization account to the master account, that is designated account that I mentioned here, right? So the user identity will be created here, and we can actually navigate there. So over there, what you would see is you will see an IAM permission. So IAM user identity created, and for that identity, so I have configured assume role-based access for the roles that are created in the child accounts. Okay, so here the only access it has is like there is one more access which is fetching a region, because as part of the onboarding there is a fetch region button, right, to get us the list of regions so that you can pick and choose the regions that you want. Right here you can see that AppViewX will be able to assume to any roles with this specific name, right? And it can be part of any account. Usually over here you can, if you want to restrict it to specific accounts, you can put a specific account number as well here. If you're giving AppViewX access to only 5 different accounts instead of having a wildcard, you can have a resource with a list, and you can explicitly mention the individual account numbers as part of the ARN, right? So in the individual child accounts, I have created an ARN, sorry, role ARN, basically a role identity. And for that role identity, I have assigned permissions to manage uh, resources such as ELB, and then ACM, IAM, right? As you can see, there is no role, there is no user account. I have a role created here. And for this role, I have ACM policy attached. So this is required to manage the AWS Certificate Manager service. This is required to manage the certificates in your ELB service, and these permissions are required to manage certificates in your IAM service, right? In case if you want to only provide read-only access to AppViewX, right? You can remove any of the write tasks like upload certificates or tax certificates, right? You can remove any of the write task as part of the policy. That way, AppViewX will not have write access to your environment. But without a write access, right, AppViewX won't be able to push any sort of any certificates to the environment, but it can just monitor the certificate expiry, and it can alert you, right? So so that's pretty much about the prerequisites, right? The policies over here, right? This is something which is available as part of our help center documentation. So So over there, right from the creation of users, creating the role identity or generating credential for the user and attaching the policies, everything is covered step by step, right? So you can follow these steps and then you can simply copy paste these JSONs into your AWS accounts, right? As in when in the respective policy, right? So this policy is for managing the IAM entities in your IAM certificates in your account, right? So you can do a copy paste of this and you can manually onboard it, but that is not going to be scalable, right? When you have hundreds and thousands of AWS accounts, manually configuring this permission is not going to be a scalable approach. Instead, what you can do is you can have a cloud formation template, right? We have a generic cloud formation template, which you can customize based on your requirement. In case if you find any difficulties, we can have it customized for you, right? So based on the services that you're planning to onboard. So with the cloud formation templates, you can deploy it as part of your cloud stack set option. So from one single cloud, you can provision the certificates, cloud account, you can provision the required permissions for all the individual child accounts, the role creation, the permission mapping that I mentioned. That is something which you'll have to do for each and every single accounts, right? So that is something which you can execute in one shot with the help of the cloud formation templates using cloud stack set option. So that is documentation for that is also available as part of our so help center documentation, right? So that's pretty much about the prerequisites that is required for AWS, right? So once the prerequisites is done, you will have the account details, right? Like access key and secret key, which is generated from your user credential. So I mean user identity that you have created. And so for AppViewX, to discover the accounts, you will have to, enable this organization-based discovery. So over here, this is the role I was talking about. This is the role name. This is the name of the role that was created in our organization account, right? I have used the same role name even for child accounts, and in all of the child accounts, I use the same role name, right? That way, I don't have to onboard each and every single child accounts just by giving the name, right? So AppViewX can discover the accounts here, and it can assume to the role based on the role name that I have given as part of the organization policy, right? So here you can pick and choose the list of services that you want to go ahead with, right? So in case of ACM, if you just want to, enroll a certificate using ACM Certificate Authority, you can, enable this. And if you want to discover all the certificates which are issued by Amazon CA, this enablement is going to, discover all the certificates for you. And in case if you are using any third-party CS certificates like DigiCert or internal CS certificate being uploaded to your ACM, ELB, and all that, so you can enable this keystone, right? So this will help you to discover and manage all the third-party CS certificates that are, stored in your ACM. Similarly, if I would have enabled this private CA, right? In case if you have private CA hosted in your AWS infrastructure, that will be automatically discovered and that will be onboarded into the certificate authority section in AppViewX, right? Similarly, in case if I enable this EC2 instance, right? So in case of if there is availability of any EC2 instance, the service will be discovered and that will be onboarded into the service category in the device management section. So, so when it comes to EC2, right, the prerequisites are slightly different. Over there, other than IAM prerequisites, you have to have SSM agent should maybe use system manager agents to communicate with the EC2 machines. So we don't need credentials to talk to EC2 machines. We don't need IP address of the individual EC2 machines, or even we don't need end-to-end network IP access to any of your EC2 endpoints, right? Often these missions are segmented, right? So the approach that we have took for EC2 is to communicate through SSM agents. That we don't need any of these informations. Your EC2 missions will be automatically discovered and onboarded into AppViewX. And once the missions are onboarded, we will start to discover the certificates by doing a file system scan and a process scan, right? The same is applicable for other services as well. Upon enabling these services, you can start to manage that. And if your workloads are running only in a specific AWS regions, instead of selecting all the regions, you can pick and choose a specific region. Over here, I have chosen US East and US West. That's why you will be seeing only US East and US West as part of the grid that is shown here, right? And this specific, so these are the accounts that was discovered from the organization service, right? And this is marked as failed because I selected this specific account and marked it as unmanaged. So this is my organization account. I don't have any workloads running in my organization account. So I have specifically, marked these accounts. So you can mark any of these accounts and make it as, manage or unmanage. Right. So once these accounts are onboarded into AppViewX, once it is discovered and onboarded into AppViewX, you will see that in the AppViewX inventory over here, AWS inventory over here. So the child accounts in the naming convention of the accounts, right? The child accounts will have the term C, right? And the naming terminology that is given for the master account, right? It will continue for all of your child accounts. And this is the account number of your master account, right? And this is your child account number of the individual child accounts, right? The letter C, represents that this is a child account and this is the parent account. So any modification that you do on the parent account will immediately reflect on all of these child accounts. In case if I go ahead and disable some of these accounts in the master account, it is going to remove those entries for these child accounts, right? It is not going to be available as part of this inventory, right? So that level of modification can be done at individual child account level as well as master account level. If you click on the individual child accounts level, it will give you visibility on the list of services that it is managing and the regions that it is managing and the current discovery status, right? So at any point in time, you can pick and choose, these certificates, these entries and mark it as managed or unmanaged, right? So once these accounts are onboarded, by default, right, if you have the sync enabled, so AppViewX will automatically perform the certificate discovery and it will onboard all the certificates which are part of your AWS cloud account. But let's say you don't want to onboard all of your AWS certificates. Instead, you want to pick and choose the certificates that you want to onboard into AppViewX, right? In such situations, you can mark it as ignored at the time of configuring this device setup. So if you mark it as ignored and clicked on save, what will happen is AppViewX will not attempt to discover any resources or certificates from your AWS infra. Instead, what you will have to do is you will have to navigate to the certificate discovery section. And you can go to the cloud scan and initiate an on-demand cloud scan, right? Here you have the option to pick and choose a specific AWS account, right? So in case if you have onboarded your AWS account as standalone, so you will have to go with this option, right? If you click on add resource, the standalone accounts which are onboarded in AppViewX will be shown here. If you have onboarded as a cross or federated account, right? So that will be shown here, right? But so right now what you have seen is the master account that is onboarded as a cross account. If you are initiating a discovery for a master account, the discovery will be initiated for all the child accounts that are part of the master account, right? If you have thousands of AWS accounts, which is part of this specific master account, the discovery will be initiated for all the regions and services in that specific account, right? Similarly, if you have, but if you want to, restrict access or restrict discovery to a specific child account, right? So you can do that by selecting a child account here. So that way, whatever you see here, it is going to be only child accounts, right? But if I want to do a service specific and region specific discovery instead of doing a complete discovery of all certificates, right? In such situations, you can just choose a specific region and specific service in a specific account, right? And then you can proceed with the discovery. It's a useful discovery scan. The results will be available as part of your discovery status. So I have a couple of discoveries that are already initiated with the interest of time, right? So, so as I mentioned earlier, the certificates, right? So not only the certificates are discovered and onboarded into AppViewX, we also discover the tags which are attached to the certificates. For example, this specific certificate, right? So if we if I go to the inventory, I'm searching it with the certificate tag, right? So with the name webinar, so I have created a certificate. I have pushed this certificate into AWS with these tags. At the time of pushing, I have included these tags, right? so that at any point in time, I can search it with the same tag in the AWS console as well, right? You will see that as part of the existing certificate tag. If you navigate to the ACM inventory, so it will show you this certificate with the same set of tags that is shown in AppViewX, right? So at that, either at the time of enrollment or at the time of pushing a certificate, right? It is pretty much the same CLM product, right? So every other feature that you consume or have seen as part of the AppViewX Plus is applicable for the multi-cloud, right? So only difference is like in terms of onboarding the cloud accounts into AppViewX and how they are being populated and what are the differences, right? So one let me take you to the enrollment option, so if you have a practice of adding tags at the time of pushing certificates to the endpoints, right? So let me choose the authority certificate. All right. So that can be done with the help of this certificate attribute. Let me show you the certificate push part. Let's say I want to push this specific certificate to the AWS ACM. Change it to cloud, AWS, and ACM. Let me rename this connector to a different one so that it is not clashing with the existing one. And to push the certificate to this endpoint, right? So that at the time of pushing, I can add certificate tags, project, demo, right? And I can click on save and it is the same certificate push process to the endpoints, right? So in addition to this, at the time of pushing a certificate to the ACM, right? If you are not giving any certificate ARN, what will happen is the certificate will be pushed as a new certificate to the ACM endpoint. But if you want to replace an existing certificate in ACM, you can enter the certificate ARN of the existing certificate, right? So that way, the existing certificate will be replaced by the AWS, sorry, by the AppViewX. Now, so these certificates are pushed that way. If you place the cursor on the existing certificates, right, it will show you the details of the certificate, right, where exactly it is being pushed to, right, which tenant, which subscriptions, or the service, what exactly the certificate name, for this entity when it was pushed to the key vault, right. You will be able to find all those informations as part of the tooltip informations here. And so that's pretty much about the AWS, right? So we have covered the enrollment. So when it comes to enrollment, so it is the same CA policy that we have covered in the other webinars, right? Using the CA policy, you can enforce compliance, right? So you can enforce compliance on the certificate authorities on the key lengths, the domain name that you want to whitelist, or hashing algorithm that you want to go with. And if you want restrict it based on a specific domain name and all that, that can be done through this CA policy. And other than this, right, all these cloud accounts can be assigned to your individual DevOps or DevSecOps team, right? So that way, with the help of our existing role-based access control, you can only assign a specific set of accounts to your DevOps and different set of accounts to your application teams and all that. That can be done through ORBAC, right? Under the resource section, you will find certificates. One moment. Right. So let me cover. We have only a few minutes to cover the Azure Key Vault. Let me also cover the Azure Key Vault onboarding as well, right? So in terms of Azure Key Vault, right now we have only subscription-based onboarding, right? You will have to manually onboard each and every single subscription into AppViewX. in case if you want to onboard Azure clouds. But in the future, right, tenant-based onboarding will be available. This is something which is currently being worked upon and currently being tested, right? Probably as part of the FP1, this feature will be released. In that, you can onboard multiple Azure subscriptions in one single shot, right? So you won't be seeing the subscription ID details over here just by providing the tenant ID, client ID, and secret details, right? The services of the Azure cloud can be onboarded, and if you AppViewX will automatically discover all the Azure subscriptions, and it will be populated in the AppViewX inventory. Okay, when it comes to Azure onboarding, at first we will have to register a service principal under Microsoft Intro ID, right? Under app registration, I have already created an app for AppViewX, right? And for this app, we will have to create as client secret. Once a client secret is created, you can copy the value of this, and this is what you would pass it to in AppViewX, right? So AppViewX will be using this service principal to communicate with your Azure accounts, and the other details such as the tenant ID, the client ID will be available under this overview, and then the subscription ID details will be available under the subscription section, right? So from here, you can copy those 6 subscriptions. And within this subscription, let's say if I want to manage the key vaults and the application gateways, what I will have to do is I will have to navigate to the roles, and there is an option to create a custom role. I have already created a custom role for AppViewX here. Right. So we all these are very minimal permissions, right? It's not that we are asking for admin privileges to manage your key vaults. So all these are only minimal permissions that are required to do the certificate upload or certificate enrollment and all that, right? Similarly, you can create a custom role specifically for app gateway. And once the custom roles are created, what you can do is you can use the role assignment tab over here to assign that role for the service principal that we have created, right? If you click on add, a role assignment, and then over here you will have to choose the AppViewX service principal. To assign it to AppViewX, right? So this is how you create the roles with permissions that are required for AppViewX, and you can have it assigned to the service principal that are for that the service principal that we have created, right? So once that is done, we can navigate to the Azure inventory. Not sure what happened to this enrollment. Let me take you to the different enrollment. So all the permissions that are required for managing your Azure accounts so are available as part of the AppViewX documentation as well, right? So you can simply copy the JSON at the time of creating those role for AppViewX service principal. All right. The format is pretty much same as of AWS, wherein you will pick and choose the individual services that you want to manage through AppViewX. Once you enable this auto sync, right, AppViewX will periodically, sync with your Azure account based on the frequency that you have configured here. The frequency can be customized for individual services as well. Uh, by selecting these accounts, you can synchronize with these services on different days based on number of hours or days, right? You can schedule this, right? And as you can see, the AppViewX has integration with API management, app registration, right? And app services like this covers your web app, logic app, and mobile app. This is all about managing the load balancer certificates in the Azure. This is about managing the SSO certificates in Azure, right? In the event of, certificate renewal, right? We can also alert the application owners with the templates that are given here. That way that they get to know as and when we rotate the certificates over here, right? They will also have to download these certificates and upload it in the application, right? So that is also has been handled as part of the Azure integration that we have built, right? Similarly, the integration is available for Key Vault and virtual machines. In terms of virtual machines, we can manage Linux and Windows virtual machines as of today, right? So that's pretty much I had for today, right?